Hey guys, and welcome one and all to episode 7 of Telecast PH, the Telework PH Outsourcing Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the benefits of outsourcing, keeping a positive mindset, business advice, and the many ways outsourcing can help your business scale up quicker, and at the same time you'll be helping our mission to make an impact on poverty here in the Philippines. I'm bizdevjeff, your host. Thank you for joining, and a sincere thank you to everyone who has been following this podcast and my content on LinkedIn. If you want to find out more about us and what we do and how we can help your business scale up quicker, just hop on over to www.teleworkph.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn by searching bizdevjeff Thompson or the hashtag bizdevjeff. Now, I know I said yesterday that I would be doing a daily podcast, and I have every intention of doing so. I've got a lot of great content lined up. However, I need to get some dental work done, so I'm not certain when I'll be back on the microphone. It's going to be a few days. Luckily, the weekend is here, the weekend is upon us, so that's going to give me plenty of time to heal. Right, so moving on, the other day, right before New Year's, a few days ago, I was getting ready for the new year. Clearing out some old email folders, freshening up the Trello board, before our CEO gets on me about it. And I was thinking about how much I like to keep things as organized as possible. Some even say I'm a bit obsessive. Now, I'll admit I'm a bit of a neat freak to an extent, but I just like to have a nice space to work so my mind stays clear and clutter-free. And it got me thinking about my grandfather, Grandpa Joe. Now, Grandpa Joe was an amazing guy. He really was. His name was Joe Urban. He was born in 1916 in what was at the time Czechoslovakia and immigrated to the U.S. in 1920 when he was about 4 years old. He lived through the Depression, Herbert Hoover, and even served here in the Philippines during World War II. Guy stood about 6'4" with these bright blue eyes. And he was like totally my hero. When I was growing up, my father, took off to go do his own thing. So he wasn't always around to help us out with, simple home repairs and whatnot. And I was just a kid. So, my expertise or my knowledge of home repairs and taking care of a house was very limited. So that job, those kind of jobs would fall into the hands of my grandfather. So now when he would come around to do a repair or to do, some sort of project to help Mom out, I would rush, of course, to be his assistant. Not that I was much help, really. I had one job, and that was to keep the workspace clean and clutter-free. He'd always say, I can't stand to work in a mess. I can't think right. And he was always serious about it. Very serious about keeping his workspace clean and clutter-free. And he applied this mentality to all areas of his life. Now, every once in a while, I would get to go visit him at his office. He was a salesman for the Akron Bearing Company in Akron, Ohio. And now these are the days, of course, before computers, but his desk was still meticulously organized. It's just how he worked, even as busy as he was. Now, I remember going over to Grandpa's house on Sundays. And normally he would be outside planting flowers around the yard or watering his flower beds. Now, this was the late 70s, early 80s, and it was still a bit of a chauvinistic time. And, I thought this was strange since he was a guy. And, guys don't like flowers. So I asked him one time, I said, Grandpa, why are you planting flowers? That's a girl's job. It's a job for girls. And he looked at me with these bright blue eyes and said, I get to look at them, don't I? And I get to smell them. So why not plant them? If I want my yard to look nice, then it's my job. Well, that's pretty much stuck with me my whole life. So talking about workspaces, offices, and desks, I've seen some of the desks of writers and entrepreneurs and other leaders, and it's amazing how they can even function in such a cluttered mess. It drives me nuts. But I've also noticed how they can get lost easily. distracted and get disconnected, become easily agitated, and even struggle to get things done. Now, I seem to have adopted that same mentality as Grandpa Joe. I can't stand to work in a mess. And there are days that it seems like I live at my desk. And when my desk or workspace starts to get cluttered or full of notes and everything gets disorganized, it greatly impacts my creativity and my mindset. Like my whole thought process just gets all cluttered. I get frustrated, I get irritated, I get stressed out. But then I stop for a minute. I take a deep breath and I clear my desk of any unnecessary junk. I tuck away all the notes that I'll need for later, and I just generally get it organized again. The transformation of my productivity is instant and amazing. I like to call my office, my desk area, my sacred space. I like to keep it, clean and clutter-free, but it's not just only the physical clutter that can disrupt your day and decrease productivity. Negativity, cynicism, doubt, fear, worry, all of these can manipulate your thought processes and affect your decision making and creativity. A lot of people underestimate how powerful this mental clutter can be. Now, some people like to put up decorations and other decor in their offices or on their desks to create that positive atmosphere. Now, I personally am not one for those kind of decorations. I like the flow of empty space, but I'm heavily into aromatherapy. I like incense. I got one of those essential oil diffusers for my office space, and I am totally addicted to it. And I also like to tell Google Home, to play some nature sounds or some other white noise. Not loud and nothing with words that'll make me want to sing along or anything else, but just something in the background to set that kind of mood. One thing that's really interesting, and I've done a lot of reading about in the past, is Feng Shui, the art of placement. It's really an amazing way to rearrange your workspace, or your living space for that matter, to maximize energy flow and productivity. That might be something you'd want to take a look at. Some people like to put little knickknacks or whatnots on their desk, to cheer them up, to make them happy. I say, hey, whatever you like. Plants are another thing that open up the mind, relieve stress, and can liven up the workspace. I personally don't have much of a green thumb, and I tend to kill plants for some reason. Lord knows I've tried to keep them. So besides now just your productivity and your creativity and your mindset, how will all of that affect your business if you have a cluttered workspace and it's affecting you in these ways? Company culture. I mean, think about it. If you're in a bad mood, if you're frustrated, if you're easily stressed, you're agitated, you begin to make, harsh and rash decisions, that can vibrate through the entire office. And it can set the precedent for how others in the office work around you. And much worse, it can even affect the clients or customers. Another way to free up a lot of your time, your headspace, and to clear away a lot of that clutter is by outsourcing. If you find yourself getting overwhelmed by too many tasks, wearing too many hats, or the headache of all of the non-core activities of your business, you might want to think about getting a personal virtual assistant or even an outsourced staff to handle many of the things that take up a lot of your mental and workspace. So when you outsource, say, customer support or back office operations, then you no longer have to worry about all of that inner office stuff that can drag an entrepreneur down. The outsourcing partner takes care of everything from staffing to computers, desks and space to in-house IT and cybersecurity and everything else in between. I can help you build that team and save a little bit of your sanity. Right, so that will wrap it up for this episode of Telecast PH. I've been bizdevjeff, your host. Please like and subscribe, and don't forget to hop on over to LinkedIn and follow the hashtag bizdevjeff, and there you can see more of my other content and videos. You can also catch me on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter, all by simply searching bizdevjeff. And of course, don't forget, if you want to find out more about us and what we do and how we can help your business scale up quicker, hop on over to www.teleworkph.com. Take care, everyone. Be safe. This is bizdevjeff, signing off.